this idea of whatever being from Agamben, being such that it is. And I want to compare it to a kind of way of thinking about whatever that's more familiar to me, which is the U.S. American popular vernacular, where whatever is an affective verbal response that deflects another's comments. It's not generally, it's not generally uttered in response to a question, but to a statement or observation through which another might be attempting to harness the recipient or hearer. So I say to my 15-year-old son, "You haven't cleaned your room." The response, "Whatever." Here's another example from Liam Lynch and George W. Bush. Sorry.
I'm George W. Bush, leader of the free world. I want to bomb Iraq. And when the world says no, I say, yeah, whatever. Saddam has started to meet our demands. Yeah, whatever. I talked to Colin Powell. He said, "Sir, maybe we should give the inspectors more time." I said, "No, you know why? Whatever. And this is my United States of whatever. President Bush, don't talk to me now. This is my United States of whatever. Leave it to me. Hello.
This is Putin. Russia will be no war.
I see. Whatever. Mr. President, North Korea's got nukes. Oh, ding dong dong ding ding dong dong. Translation? Whatever. Aiken bin Laden, you still have not cut me. I'm George W. You know what the W stands for? Yet.
The response, whatever, registers the fact of another utterance, of a communicative effort or engagement. It acknowledges communicativity through the deflection of the communicative effort. The sender's message, whether understood in terms of its content or its intent, whether conscious or unconscious, is neither accepted nor rejected. Rather, the whatever response distills the message into the simple fact of utterance. Whatever resembles the response of Herman Melville's Bartleby, the scrivener who replies, "I would prefer not to," when given a task or instruction. For some contemporary philosophers like Michael Hart and Antonio Negri, as well as Agamben, and Bartleby provides a figure of refusal, opposition, or resistance, a model of escape or disentanglement from the relations of power constitutive of contemporary capitalist control societies. The argument is premised on power's dependence on resistance. The transgression of the law calls it into being. Or protesters need police brutality in order to demonstrate the validity of their protests. Bartleby then suggests a way out of the dialectic of law and its transgression. Sidestepping resistance, he deprives power of its hold. Yet even as Bartleby evades the circuit of power and resistance by refusing to refuse, he continues to rely on his position as a singular subject. He says "I," referring to himself as a subject, and not just any old subject, but a subject with a view, a preference. As such, he remains exposed to power. He still cares. In response to a request, Bartleby does more than acknowledge communication, the fact that a message has been delivered and received. His answer affirms the intelligibility of the request, even as it challenges the normative expectations informing it, right? So he doesn't say, like, "I don't know what you mean," or "I don't understand," right? "What are you telling me," right? And rather than challenging the sender of the message's authority to make the request that he makes, right? So Bartleby doesn't say, "Who are you to ask me this?" Instead, what he does is make himself what matters. He would prefer not to. He is a subject with preferences, and these preferences must be attended to. In contrast, the only affirmation in whatever is of communication as such. Another has communicated. This communication in no way obligates me as the recipient of the message. By responding, whatever, I have signaled the minimal degree of awareness of communicative being. A message is sent in expectation of response. After all, I didn't completely ignore you. Whatever asserts no preferences. It neither affirms nor rejects. And it doesn't expose the subject as a desiring subject to whom something matters. There's also an affective dimension to whatever, an insolence or attitude or provocation that arises out of its function as a non-responsive response. By acknowledging communication without attending to the content of the message, whatever denies the sender the sense that her message has been received because its content remains unaddressed. The sender is challenged. Her position is undermined. Whatever forestalls a communicative exchange even as it adopts communicative form. It refrains from establishing the subject position of the one who responds with whatever, and it unsettles the position of the one who initiates the exchange. It's like a glitch in orality. And if anyone's been referred back to Walter Ong in times, he talks about literacy and orality. So this is like a glitch in orality. If communicativity is such that it is, whatever communicativity, tags forms of subjectivity and belonging, discernible in contemporary media practices, who and what is likely to benefit? What kinds of political and economic relations are likely to flourish in these new communicative habitats? Whatever it takes. By now, an extensive literature documenting the production of national identities through media and communication technologies exists. One that I find particularly useful and actually brilliant is Susan Buck-Morss' Dream World and Catastrophe. Buck-Morss explains the mass identities of utopian and project-based states, such as the US and the Soviet Union during the 20th century. She highlights the dreams and fantasies enabled by the movies, the imagines of collectivity that film inside it. For communist and capitalist alike, 20th century technological practices were also identity projects. 20th century technological projects were also identity projects. Four components of Buck-Morss's account are particularly compelling. Mass media's direct addressing of society, the way mass media changes the nature of crowds, the spectacular function of mass media, and the compensatory logic of mass media's organization of space. Now, rather than recite Buck-Morss's discussion, what I want to do is just consider the fantasies, the possibilities, the subjects that multiply intersecting and increasingly personalized media and communication technologies stimulate. So I'm interested then in thinking about how changes from media constitutive of projects of national utopian imagination might lead in the direction of whatever be. So basically the move here is to say, okay, there's a big literature that talks about how media has produced national identities. There's been a change in media, so let's think about the different kinds of identity production, subjectivity production under contemporary media form, like personalized network communication media. Since I'm relying on Buck-Morss, there will be four domains that I'll think about. First, if mass media address society directly, organizing and speaking to masses as collectives, contemporary network media have multiple addressees known and unknown, friends and strangers. Bloggers may write for others whom they imagine share their interests, a group of uninformed that they might enlighten, or even future versions of themselves, right, for those who blog as journalists. The set of friends who receive my updates on Facebook, my network, are uniquely mine. Each user's network is different, even as they overlap and intersect. Blogs and social networks then do not provide broadly shared symbolic identities from which we see ourselves. Blogs don't address society writ large. they invite